One.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Maria Fisher, and I am the host of Conversations in the Den. Now I'm in my den.
Yay.
And today, our first episode is with my fellow stroke survivor, Jennifer Wolfenden, a very inspiring and insightful lady that I met along my journey, who helped me through the initial stages of my in supporting me through this. So here's Jennifer, and Jennifer can go ahead and tell your story.
Oh my goodness. Well, what do you want to know, Maria? Tell me what you want to know.
I want to know how your stroke took place.
Okay.
What warning signs you had, if you had any.
Yes.
And what limitations occurred due to your stroke.
Yes, of course. My stroke was May 26th, 2010. And I was actually working out at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working out at John Savitas at the time. And that was how I worked out. I loved boot camp. I loved high impact.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was a boot camp girl too.
You like boot camp too, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what I was doing. And I think when I'd gotten there that morning, I was away for the weekend in Buffalo because our oldest daughter, was heading to the States for school. So that was our last weekend to spend time together. So me and the girls went away for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that would happen on my drive there was I had this nagging right side headache, and I never get headaches. But I don't know anything about stroke. I didn't know anything. I had no knowledge of stroke. So
absolutely, neither did I. Because
I just
like I always say to people, it's called the Heart and Stroke Foundation. So I thought it had something to do with your heart. I had no idea. I had no idea about a stroke.
No idea. I had no knowledge in my brain of stroke. So this nagging headache on the right side bottom of my head, usually if I ever get a headache ever in my whole life, it means one of two things. Either I'm short on rest or I need water. So I decided to put those two things in place for the rest of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter how much water I drank, no matter how much sleep I got, this headache would just not go away.
Okay.
And so I spent the whole weekend in Buffalo. I did have a great time, but this headache just kept sitting there in the right side of my head.
Now, were you taking anything for the headache?
No, because I don't really take medications because usually if I ever have a headache in my life, water and sleep always gets rid of it. Always, without fail. But this time, and I didn't have any Tylenol because I don't carry things like that because that's not how my headache goes if I ever have one.
Mm-hmm.
So then it wouldn't go away. I came back home from the vacation with the girls. And then I thought, you know what? The only other thing I can think of to beat this headache is just a really firm, vigorous workout. So I hit boot camp Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Because usually it fixes everything. I thought maybe, you know what, it's stress. Maybe I'm just stressed and I don't know it. Because usually I can release stress at the gym. So I thought, you know what, the water is not working. The sleeping is not working. I am just going to hit this headache up with some stress release. We're going to do boot camp. Although I did work out at the hotel and that didn't help. But I thought, you know what, let me hit it up with something really high powered. So I got to the gym. And if you know John Savitas, we work in circuits, and boot camp is in circuits. So you have partners in your circuits. The partner I happened to be with in my circuit was an MD. And so
wow. Mm-hmm.
I know. And I was totally like, I got there and I wasn't feeling well. And I said to God, you know what, I can't follow 6 different people. Can you just make sure that my circuit partner is one person? I don't want 4 people in my circuit this morning, just one person or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had one person in my circuit and she turned out to be an MD. And so she told me, she says, later on she said to me, look, I saw you picking up your weights with your right hand. She says, but when you tried to reach for your weights with your left hand, she said, nothing happened. And she says, I knew you were having a stroke. I watched you because prior to that, I saw you leaning against the wall and I poked you in the shoulder and I said, are you okay? And she said, you never even answered me. And so when I saw
Oh,
you not,
wow.
yeah, she said, when I saw you not being able to pick up your weight with your left hand, I knew you were having a stroke. So I told us she told the instructor, stop the class and take her out. She's having a stroke. So she takes me out and the instructor comes with her. And then they look at her and they go, what do we do now? And she goes, call 911. And they go, really? And she goes, yeah, she's having a stroke, call 911.
You
And
know, exactly.
so within 45 minutes, I was at the Hamilton General. Within another 45 minutes, I had been assessed by one of the world's best, Dr. Iskowski. And he confirmed I was having a stroke. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And so with some questions, I answered a few questions, and it's really, really important that there's certain things about yourself that you have to be certain about. You have to be somewhat certain about your body weight. You have to be somewhat certain that you don't take drugs, because if in your brain you see cigarettes as drugs, then when they ask you if you take recreational drugs, you will say yes, and that will disqualify you from a TPA, which is a clot buster.
Clot buster, yes.
So I was given the clot buster because I said, no, I didn't take drugs. I knew my weight. And so they were able to calculate my weight quickly with the amount of drugs I needed. I got the clot buster, which meant that my hands and feet worked.
Okay, so now here's my question. Now we know there's several kinds of strokes.
Yes.
So what kind of stroke did you have?
I had an ischemic stroke, an ischemic,
Okay,
which
so
is
you had a blood clot.
a blood clot that went straight to my brain, stopped my brain from working. And so once they did the Drano thing and cleared the blood clot, I found myself very, very confused, very weak, very, my brain had slowed to like thick honey. And so people were talking to me and I wasn't computing. I couldn't respond because I knew what I wanted to say, but as it took so long to come out that people were actually going, they were carrying on. They would carry on talking because now they were saying,
you not be interested.
Exactly, that's right, because I was taking so long to answer. And they were like, well, she's not well, we'll pass on that question. But one of the things about stroke people is that, especially in the first year or two, is that we do take a long time to answer, but it doesn't mean we don't know what we want to say. We absolutely know what we want to say. It's just that for us to find the words in our brain, for us to string it together in a sentence and bring it to our mouth, that takes a long time, because brain damage means that we have to go find, we have to fetch, string together, bring it to our lips, and actually say it. And so a lot of times with stroke survivors, people think that we don't know what we want to say, we're not interested, or we have nothing to say. And it's so far from the truth, because we absolutely know what we want to say.
Well, the difference between your stroke and mine is, well, first of all, I was at work. I had a numbness in my jaw, but I did not have facial distortion. So I was speaking just fine. I was speaking to my coworkers. I was walking just fine. I left. I called my doctor's office. I said, because I felt this numbness. And she said, he has walk-in hours tonight, Maria, so just come on in. So I went to the doctor. He took my blood pressure. My blood pressure was normal. And he basically told me, you're having a tension headache, Maria, because I had a lot going on. My daughter was graduating. She had just did her prom. We had just had her prom dress made, the whole thing. And so at that point, I went home, went to bed, and every morning I woke up naturally at 6 o'clock in the morning, without an alarm clock is what I mean when I say naturally. And I woke up at 6 in the morning. I stepped off the bed and I fell to the ground. And
Wow.
I mean, it never crossed my mind I'm having a stroke because, I mean, like I said, I was also a workout person. I did spin classes, I did boot camp, you know, so all of that was normal to me.
Yes.
I was a healthy eater. I was not an unhealthy person. So there
Yeah.
was no reason why I would think I'm having a stroke. So I thought maybe something had spilled on the floor and my foot was slipping on it because the left side of my body was paralyzed, but I did not realize this.
Yeah.
So I kept trying to pull myself up. I was using the sheets on my bed. I was doing everything I could, trying to get off the floor. I heard my daughter downstairs, and every morning she listened to her radio station. And I heard her down there listening to her radio station. I was calling her, but I think my words must have been slurred because she couldn't hear me. And then she was running late. So she ran out the door. She didn't even come up and say goodbye to me. And so she left and I just laid there on the floor. But I was alert, like as far as talking to myself.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I was joking around with myself. I was saying, you've fallen and you can't get up. In my brain, you know?
And you don't have a button to press at this point because you're too young.
So, you know, I'm 46 at the time, so I have no idea. I mean, I had no preparation for having a stroke. I mean, I slept on the right side of the king size bed. So there was no way for me to get up on the bed and go to get the phone. So I basically just laid there trying to, well, I continued to try to get up, but that was for naught, obviously. And so ultimately, because of my boss,
Yeah.
knowing me after 8 years of working with her at the university, she knew that I would never not come to work and not call in or text her or something. And so
Yeah.
we had a big town hall meeting that morning, and she knew Maria would never not show up to work.
Of
So
course.
when I did not come to work, she called my daughter's school. And we're very close, so she knew my daughter's name of my daughter's school. She just contacted my daughter's school and asked to speak to her, and she spoke to her and asked her if she had seen me. And at that point, Kendra left school and came home and came up into my room, and she saw me, and then she called 911. So at this point, I had been on the floor for probably about 6.5 hours.
Wow.
So I had an ischemic stroke, which is a clot that traveled into my carotid artery. And so the clot was in my artery, which was preventing the flow of blood into my brain, which then is also, means there's no oxygen going into my brain. So I was on the floor for 6 hours. So I was not within the range to have a clot buster, because you have to have a clot buster, I think, within 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
And so the EMS people came upstairs, and the girl was saying, introducing herself and all of that, introducing herself and her partner. And she said, Maria, I think you've had a stroke. And I'm thinking in my mind, geez, they really need to train these people better, because I don't understand how she could possibly think a young person like me is having a stroke.
I know. I had the same idea when they told me I was having a stroke in the ER. I said, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I went, you got to be kidding. People that are 70 have strokes, not 41.
You know?
So that's fine. I'll let you figure it out. I'm not having a stroke, but I'll let you figure it out.
Yeah, so I was thinking, they really need to train these people better, because how could you possibly be thinking that I'm having a stroke?
But one of the things I find, Maria, is that one of the things I did not know 10 years ago was that babies have strokes.
Yes.
Young children have strokes. Pregnant moms have strokes. And this is something that's very, very prevalent, and it's been around for a long time. And so when I realized that,
sorry.
Yeah, go
We
ahead.
all have the perception that old people have strokes.
Yes, and it's
We don't
not true.
understand because we don't understand that strokes are, anybody can have a stroke. Like one of the things that I tell people all the time now is, because I've heard several stories of stroke survivors, that you can have a stroke from taking birth control pills.
Yep.
And a lot of girls are taking birth control pills at 14 and 15 years old.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
that's
and they
what
don't even understand that they can have a stroke from that
it's
because
true.
of the hormones.
And that's one of the things that they did was as soon as they knew that I was taking birth control pills, they pulled me off the pill. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had this 10 years ago, I stopped taking birth control pills. That threw me into early, what do you say, midlife acne. And so at 41 years old,
Oh, so you were
I was,
having a good old time.
I was, I was breaking out with acne, and I was having a stroke. I had my body. They were totally killing me. Actually, the nurse came and she came in, and I was opening the drawer and taking my birth control pill every morning. And then one day, this barracks of a woman, she comes in, big, strong, 6 feet tall woman, and she said, "Is that your daily meds that you take at home?" I go, "Yes." She said, "Can I see it?" I go, "Yes." She goes, "You're not. I don't want you to take these anymore until a doctor says so." I said, "But it's just my birth control pill." She says, "No." I went, "Okay." And
You're like, listen, I'm not trying to have no babies right up in here right now.
but that was too funny though. But it's interesting because what that did, after that day in the hospital, that those days that turned into about a week and a half in the hospital, what that did was it threw me into a world that I didn't know existed. And then I realized that not only did I know not only did I not know that world of stroke for people existed, especially young people under 50,
Mm-hmm.
I also figured out that the rest of the world didn't know it existed either.
Absolutely. The reason I found out about the birth control thing because I was I couldn't take birth control pills because I was a uh, um, sorry, I just lost my word. Migraine sufferer. So I had migraines all the time, so I could not take birth control pills. But I wasn't having sex when I was young. I didn't start having sex till I was in my 20s.
Yeah. But
So that was not an issue at the time for me.
yeah.
So now when I was talking to somebody about my stroke, they said that there were these two girls, there's these two twins that went to our school, and they were cheerleaders. And I remember Susan and Carol, and were their names. And I remember somebody said to me, Carol had a stroke when she was 18, in her first year of university, from taking birth control pills.
Wow. Because they do cause blood clots in a small percentage of women.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that they are told,
Yeah.
but it's not presumed because it's not something that, when you're young, you think you're invincible. You think, oh yeah, sure, this could happen, but it's not going to happen to me.
It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. But I think that's one of the things I thought as well. This can't be happening to me. You had the same thought. But I think, Maria, I think one of the reasons we think that is because there wasn't awareness.
Absolutely.
It wasn't like breast cancer. It wasn't like, it wasn't like any other disease that we had been aware of. It wasn't like heart attacks. And so we have been saturated with awareness for cancer. We've been saturated with awareness for heart and heart disease, but we hadn't been saturated with awareness for stroke. And so as far as we were concerned, nobody was having strokes, including us. And
exactly, especially young people. Mm-hmm. Only older people were having them.
Only the old people were having strokes, not us.
Yes.
So, but one of the things, Jeff and I, when I met Jeff, he was the founder of the Hamilton Young Stroke Survivors Group. And when I got there, quickly, that's my husband. And so quickly, we became friends. He says, will you help me with this group? And so I became vice chair. He was always the chair, began helping with the group. And then I realized that that awareness needs to be a big deal, but also change. And so it was at that point in time that, Jeff and I looked at each other and went, we need to do more.
Mm-hmm.
So we partnered with March of Dimes, we partnered with Hamilton Health Sciences, we partnered with different community projects with McMaster University Research, and we just began to walk through the doors of awareness as people open it, speaking to high school students, speaking to young children, young people at the YMCA, speaking at the University of Toronto, speaking at the Hamilton Health Sciences strat planning meetings and things like that. So we kept talking and kept talking and kept talking. And one of the beautiful things about keeping talking is that change doesn't happen right away, but people start to listen and they start going, wait a minute, we need to do that. And so over the years, we've watched a lot of changes happen, because we start speaking out, we start advocating. One of the things that I noticed that people don't talk about, even today, we don't talk about this part of stroke. And it's that part of stroke where you can't afford to work, but you have no money coming in. And so one of the things that Jeff and I would do, or me specifically, is I would sit with people and say, you're not on ODSP, you've tried 3 times and they've denied you 3 times, let me help you. And so I've sat with doctors and showed them how to fill out medical forms. I've sat with medical teams to explain what the stroke survivor can't explain to themselves. Jeff and I have sat in ODSP advisory meetings, explaining to them what is it that we want and what is it that we need. But this part of the finances still is left undone, because while we've been talking a lot about that part of stroke,
Jennifer,
yes.
Because I'm not aware, and I'm sure there may and other people may not be aware of what ODSP is.
Ontario Disability Support Program, and that is a disability support program for anyone under the age of 65 that has become disabled or unable to work. And so
okay.
a lot, because of the new technology with stroke, the TPA and all of that, you will find that a stroke survivor will look like me, but we still have deficits. Our hands and feet work. But for example, for myself, I know I look well, but one of the things people don't notice about me right away is that I don't hear on my left side and I don't hear behind me. And so if you stand on my left, you could stand on my left.
Aware of that.
But you know what, Maria? You could stand on my left and cuss me out and I'll turn around and give you a hug because I haven't heard squat. And if you want to cuss me out in front of some other people, put them behind my back, cuss me out behind my back, and then I'll turn around and give all of you hugs.
Well, I unfortunately did not get TPA. So I actually, when I was in the hospital, I had no balance. I couldn't even sit up.
Yeah.
I went to the point where the first time that I realized that my balance was gone was I went to use the washroom and I didn't realize because somebody wheeled me in there in the wheelchair. And so after I was finished, I went to wipe myself and I flipped right over.
Wow. Wow.
Because I didn't understand that my balance was so off that if I tried to lean all the way this way,
yes,
that my whole body would just go flying. that was my first balance understanding. Yeah. So, but immediately I was very fortunate because, they say people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And yes. At the time I was dating this gentleman who started researching. And so he started researching, and I guess in his research, they said that you need to have rehabilitation right away. And so he would call the social worker at the hospital every day and say, can we get her into a rehab? Can we get her into a rehabilitation center? And he fought so hard for me to get into a rehabilitation center that within a month they put me in a rehabilitation center because I was unable to walk. I was unable to sit up. And I also remember something at the hospital. There was this nurse named Peter. And I remember Peter said to me, when he came into the hospital one day, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said to me, Maria, I don't want to see you laying in this bed anymore. You lay in bed when you're going to sleep. He said, because if you're sitting up, at least you're assisting with your balance. But if you're laying in the bed, you're doing nothing. So he said to me, don't lay in the bed all day. He said, get out of the bed and sit in the chair. Get somebody to put you in the chair.
Yeah.
And so from that day on, I never once slept through the day. I would just get in the chair. And it was, it was better anyways, because I had this amazing group of people that I work with at York University who would all keep coming every day to come see me. So it was like better for me to be in the chair than be in my hospital gown laying in the bed.
Yes, of course, of course.
You know, so and I tell you, it was just crazy. But I truly, you know, I can't say any more about the people at York University and how they supported me through this part of my challenge. It was just like I had a whole family of people who were all so supportive of me. And I couldn't even believe it because I didn't even, like, I knew that we all cared for one another because we were all very close.
Yeah, yeah.
But when they all started coming to the hospital and visiting me every day and on the weekends, and they would ask me, what do you need, Maria? And I would say, you know, I'd like to have some real fruit because I don't want to eat any more of that fruit salad. And then the nurse would say to me, the fridge is overflooded with fruits, Maria, because everybody from your job keeps bringing in fruits.
I love it.
Except for my boss, who is phenomenal, but she kept bringing me Godiva chocolates. And I said, Trudy, you're gonna have to stop bringing me Godiva chocolates because then I'm gonna become diabetic. I have diabetes in my family, you know? But no, she was so wonderful to me, and the staff were so wonderful to me. And it was just like, it was an overwhelming thing, but in that way, it was a blessing. I got to see and feel the love of all the people that I worked with every day, and know that they really truly did care about me. Yes. And so that was a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
I eventually ended up being sent to a rehabilitation hospital in Scarborough. At this time, I lived in Woodbridge, by the way. That was 10 minutes from York University, which is where I worked. So I was sent to Scarborough to the Providence Health Center, which is where they have the rehabilitation hospital. And then I started doing rehab. They started stretching me and massaging me and, you know, doing all the things to keep my muscles from getting atrophied. Yeah. Yeah. And then they tried to put me in the harness to try to have me walk on this treadmill. And I remember that I couldn't even stand up. Even in the harness, I would be falling over. Wow. But ultimately, you know, as time went on, I mean, and the little things, the little small, what I remember also is the little small, what am I trying to say? The little small things that I would be excited about. Like they would give us bean bags and ask you to throw them into the bucket. And if I got 3 bean bags in that bucket, girl, it was like I had hit the lottery. I was like, I got 3 bean. I would say I got 3 bean bags in the bucket today.
All the time, girl.
That meant my balance was getting better, right?
I know, but I know exactly what you're talking about. My husband he didn't get the TPA. He was exactly like you. And he said the first time he could stand up and pee, he felt like he won the Stanley Cup. And a wonderful reporter actually quoted him in the newspaper. He says, "Yep, Jeff told me first time he got out, he was able to stand up and pee. He felt like he won the Stanley Cup." Yeah.
Yeah, so the very small things start to mean so much. And you know, I was in a wheelchair. I left the rehab in a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair for a year, and then and even when I met you, I was in a wheelchair.
You were. I have to tell you right here, I am so proud of you. I mean, you girl is a motivator. Like, I mean, Jeff and I used to admire you. Every time we ran into you, every time we met with you, we would look at each other and went, wow, did she not just move from a wheelchair to a quad cane to a walker to walking by herself? Like, you were determined though. But you know, one of the things Jeff and I always said is that the people that gets better quickly or gets better at all, you have to look at who they were before. Because who you were before, where it comes to being motivated and being someone that is determined to push through, that person is what comes through after the stroke. So if you are not that person prior to the stroke, after the stroke, you are still not that person. Right. But if you know, that determination to be better, if you never had that determination to exercise, that determination to do things differently, if you never had that.
I was so determined. I remember being in the hospital, and it's so funny because I remember being in the hospital. I remember one day I was talking to God, and I said, God, please can I have a walker? Please can I have a walker? Because I was so jealous of these women walking around with walkers. Like, please can I have a walker? And you know, I never had a walker. I was in the wheelchair, and I was training at the physio, and I ended up with a cane.
Wow. So
I didn't even have a walker.
Wow.
So, you know, and I still train 5 days a week. It's become a part of me, you know, but you are absolutely correct. I've always been a determined person. I've always been a person who really pushed myself. Yeah. So that did come out of me. And when I would go to the meetings and hear the stories, and now people who are in isolation may understand, but initially when I first had the stroke, you know, I used to have a social life, you know, and then I was in a wheelchair. So now people stopped inviting me out because there was nowhere accessible.
And you know, we have to talk about that. I'm not sure if we have time to talk about all of that today, but we have to talk about that part. You know, we have to talk about the friendship part, and then I think at some point we have to talk about the intimate relationship part, because those are two huge things for survivors. It's the friendship and familyship, and being intimate again after a stroke. And those are two huge topics. I know today we're covering, you know, when I had my stroke and those things. But, you know, one of the things I suffer with that people don't know is I suffer with fatigue. And so I remember about 4 years ago, I pulled up at a Tim Hortons, and it was, if I don't sleep very well, then my fatigue is doubly worse. And so this day I was suffering with fatigue twice as much. So when I'm suffering with a lot of fatigue in that day, what I do is I always use the handicap spot. But if my fatigue is normal fatigue, because there's normal fatigue and then there's worse fatigue. Worse fatigue means that I haven't slept very well. Normal fatigue is stroke fatigue, which is always there. And so I remember pulling up at a Tim Hortons, and I parked in the handicap zone, in the handicap parking spot. And I got out, and this gentleman sitting a little ways away on a picnic bench, he says, "You can't park there." And I says, "Oh." I said, "Oh, I thought I could. Is and he said, "No, you can't park there." And I go, "Is it for someone else?" He goes, "Yes, it's for the handicapped." And I went, "Oh, that's me." He goes, "Oh." And so I decided to educate. So I said, can I share with you why I look well, but I'm handicapped? And he says, oh, please. He says, I don't mean to pry. He says, I am so sorry. I just thought you looked fine. And I just thought you shouldn't be, I didn't want you to get a ticket. And I said, no. Thank you so much for saying something. I really appreciate that. And so I explained to him how my lungs shut down. And that there are times when I stop breathing. I could just stand, I could be talking to you and I stop breathing. And I keep talking and using up all my air. But then what happens is my chest gets very tight and my eyes start bugging out of my head.
Okay, so if we see your eyes start bugging out, we're going to be like, Jennifer.
Jeff used to say, we'd be in the car and he would notice that I stopped breathing and he'd do this. He'd throw a hand, he'd grab the wheel with one hand and he'd throw the other hand on my lap and he'd go, you need to start breathing. And I go, oh, yeah, okay. And then I do this because now I'm so lacking in air that I can't get enough. I'm just sucking it in. I'm just breathing in all the air.
Basically, your deficiencies were with your hearing, with your seeing,
my lungs, and my fatigue. And so those are the things that are left. So for me, when I'm seeing, I have to always, when I get up, I always have to look down on my bottom left quadrant because my bottom left quadrant is still being rehabilitated. So there could be a small child on my left on the floor. And because I can't see that child, I could step on that child or that small dog or that small cat or whatever. So I always have to check my bottom left quadrant. But I explained to the gentleman why I'm okay to park in the handicap. And he was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And it clicked in my head, Maria. It clicked that we have to educate because people just don't look at us and go, wow, you're handicapped. So, but I tell you what, at one point, we had this thing going on at Hamilton Young Stroke Survivors Group that I oversee, and we all agreed on one thing, that we should all get a tattoo. And we should all get a tattoo of a handicap sign on our face.
Well, guess what? I'm not down for that. That one ain't happening for me.
It was so bad that we just felt so sidelined. Nobody understood it. This was like 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And we all were like, you know what? We're all getting tattoos. My husband is like, sign me up, I'm getting one. I'm like, sign me up, I'm getting one. If I get it on my face, then people will look and go, oh, she's handicapped. We just don't know what it is.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up.
Yes.
But next week we will be speaking with Andre Kerr. He is a traumatic brain injury survivor who is a custom suit designer.
Oh, wow.
And he had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident. So
well, I'm looking forward to that.
Next week.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Well, listen, Maria, thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you so much for sharing all the information.
Oh, thank you so much. Love you so much, girl.
All right. Okay. You take care.
Good luck in all you do, girl.
And thanks.